Welcome to CyberSecurity Heroes, an IRONSCALES podcast about you, the heroes of cybersecurity. You're about to hear and learn practical and experiential knowledge in our conversations with security leaders and practitioners and other influential InfoSec stars, so we can become more cyber resilient and safer together. CyberSecurity Heroes is brought to you by IRONSCALES, the most powerfully simple email security platform. And I'm your host, Brendan Rudd. And now, let's get into the show. Hey, Stephen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brendan. Great to be here. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to have you on the show. So today we're going to talk about saving your Microsoft E5 upgrade costs by configuring EOP properly. I wanted to sort of set the stage here a little bit before we dive into this. There's been this trend in the market that I'm hearing, and maybe you can chime in on this. Security folks and companies trying to buy their way out of trouble with security products, buying lots of tools and maybe overlapping with one another, causing noise and less efficacy. So I'm just curious from your conversations with customers, like what are you hearing and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question, right? Definitely see a lot of customers unaware that potentially they have a tool set sitting there that could be leveraged and is not currently, it's kind of going to waste. I see a lot of duplicative kind of tools, things that have been commoditized, but as we're all moving around 1,000 miles an hour, we're not noticing that we could extract a lot more value from the existing technology we have, but we have to understand and to free up that budget that you're talking about, some of that spend for other kind of investments into other kind of tools or attack surface. So I think that's definitely an issue we see and have to talk to and identify where those gaps exist for folks.
Speaking with guests on our show, some solutions that I've had put forward was a gap assessment. So this is one way to solve for it, where you can see what you have in place, where there might be overlap and opportunity to decommission some tools in your security stack and simplify things. What are your thoughts on that? Have you heard anything similar, speaking with customers, etc.?
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense to me. I think that the thing to know there is definitely want to have inventory and clear kind of awareness of the tools that you have in your environment. The other thing, though, I think a lot of folks may have missed or undervalued as they shifted to the cloud. These cloud kind of messaging providers, they provide a lot of tools out of the box. And so some of these solutions that when we were on-prem, we were bolting on and buying. Right now, to achieve the same result, it's something that's already been commoditized and baked into a platform. So I think that if you can find and dig into the existing tool set, you'll see not only what did you purchase and what's out there, but what has changed about the existing products that you have? What features have they added over the last several years? How does that change the dynamics of the rest of your kind of tool set? And how can you extract more value from one tool and maybe shift that cost into another area? I think is something I think is very critical.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a perfect segue, I think, into our discussion today on how can we specifically optimize your existing Microsoft EOP for better performance and the fact that it already comes with your E3 license. Let me just open up the discussion here. So Microsoft EOP is a cloud-based secure email gateway, and it excels at doing what secure email gateways are designed to do, stopping spam and malicious content. And best of all, like we said, it's included in your license for no extra cost. So in your opinion, what are the levels of efficacy among spam and malware email filters today? And do you need the most expensive solution, or can you get similar results with other less expensive solutions? Specifically from Microsoft EOP, how does it stand up?
Yeah, I think that EOP is an excellent kind of cloud-based seg. I think an excellent value play for environments and allows them to shift those resources. They're good at what they do, right? And we have to recognize that what segs were designed to do is not necessarily the threat that we're seeing today. The fact that certain things get beyond them, they're designed first and foremost around malicious content rather than more of the fraud and social engineering that we see out in the marketplace. So I think if you need that kind of reduce the spam, grab the existing malicious kind of content, I think EOP could be a great solution and free up some resources to do some other things that more next generation. And best of all, kind of EOP built into the license, you're already paying for it. Why have duplicative kind of technologies doing the same thing if you can maximize what you have in your environment today?
So what you're essentially saying is that spam and malware detection is pretty commoditized. Comparing one solution to another, your increase in protection is going to be marginal if you will average it out across all the products.
I would say you're going to hit a point of diminishing return, right? You're going to get a significant number of gains, but eventually it's going to taper off and you're not going to see any more gains because the fundamental design of any given seg is different than what the kind of threat landscape looks like today. So it's a great control, reducing noise, grabbing known, malicious content, right? The existing spam, what's one person's spam might be someone's valued content, that email from an old university or something like this. That to one person, that's noise, it's unwanted. To the other person, it's needed. But those kind of things aren't the real threats that we're seeing in the environment and people are seeing on the news today. That's not really it. So I think you implement something with a high amount of value, a low amount of cost, and start to look at other kind of alternatives and other ways to put those resources to work elsewhere in the environment is kind of how I see it.
Following up on that, do you think there is a misconception that free is not good or that you need some expensive tool to stop spam? And as you said, signature-based malware falls under quote unquote free because it's part of your E3 license.
Yeah, is free bad, right? I think it's this thing that we have expectations in the market. If I try to sell you a $300 Ethernet cable versus the one that's 6 feet, $300 versus the one that's on Amazon for $10. I have a lot of experience with the Ethernet cables. They're accessible. I use them all the time. When I plug them in, they all work the same. And we're trying to take that mentality and adapt it to email security as if it's a commodity, like a barrel oil or something like this. And that's the real problem where this kind of breaks down is that email security is not a commodity. Right? There's different vendors in the market. There's totally different approaches. There's some that won't mitigate anything, right? And they're going to tell you all about user training. There's some that will only do technology and throw that at the wall, right? And so it becomes this kind of confusing thing that's really how many email security suites has any given admin worked with, right? It's probably a handful across their career. And so they're just not aware of the other options that are available. And when they look at something that is free, we may be applying that kind of logic of it must be bad or it must be, in reality, it might just be commoditized, right? A microwave, hundreds of dollars years ago, now I can get them pretty cheap and easy and they do the same job. So it's more about how has this become commoditized over time in any kind of situation.
And probably we shouldn't be using the word free because nothing is really free. It's just packaged into the license. But the fact that they're not like adding a premium or additional fee, maybe that is just psychology. Oh, it can't be good enough because they're not charging for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I would say there's a lot of differing opinions on the market. There's a lot of kind of information out there that might sway folks and tell you that there's a huge value differentiator. And in reality, with malicious content, there's only so much we can do there, right? We have to shift our focus and look in different ways to mitigate this kind of problem of email phishing. And I mean, certainly there are some value adds to some of these segments, but the cost is exorbitant. And so you'll pay through the nose and get only single percent digits of gain. And so the question is what was that really worth? Is it worth looking at something else that might give you significantly different gains, and also gains in other ways. Maybe it's not just a protection standpoint, but also an efficiency standpoint, right? Maybe it can make your folks more efficient, faster, also at the same time protecting the environment a little bit better, right? So this defense in depth concept that everybody talks about, right? The layering approach, right? If you can have one layer that's built in and less expensive, can you add another and use those resources there?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And now we can get into the meat of the episode. What do you need to do to configure your EOP tool properly? Because I know you put together a report on this and you did a lot of research. So can you walk us through how you can get optimal gains out of what you already have with your spam filter, specifically your EOP?
Yeah, I think if you configure your EOP tool properly, right, you go through those settings, you tweak them, and frankly, to be honest, it's always going to be there's no one configuration that's going to rule them all, right? For one group that wants to be a little bit more open and have more content get through, they're going to have to tweak it. I've given kind of a baseline approach and kind of the documents that I've put out there. But I think if you configure your EOP tool, properly, start a little bit restrictive and work your way into it, you're going to catch a lot more, probably a lot more than an expensive kind of legacy seg. That's been my experience. In my experience, we did not have, in a very large organization, did not have expensive segs. We relied on EOP almost in exclusivity. That and some other trainings and other options. But EOP, I can absolutely say, will catch quite a bit if you tune it properly and you stick with it. Right? Folks, so they find some level of adversity and kind of immediately back away from it or throw up their hands to it. And it's a real challenge because they've missed that opportunity to extract and maximize the value of what they already pay for.
Can you walk us through maybe some pitfalls where companies get it wrong when trying to configure their spam filter?
It's interesting. When we're talking about technology and we're talking about these kind of things, often, I would say far more often, we have people challenges, right? It's usually not the technology that's at issue. Most of the problem becomes a change management function, a problem of not setting proper expectations, right? Not engaging leadership first and foremost, not eating our own dog food, rolling things out and not testing them on ourselves and taking and adjusting and that type of thing. Under communication, I've seen that be a big pitfall, right? Any kind of big technology project for a large enterprise or even small groups, it's these kind of change management capabilities go overlooked and they're undervalued, I think. And in reality, that is going to make the project successful. That is going to make those kind of changes acceptable and they go out in a managed way. And I wouldn't say everyone is always going to love every change from an IT organization, but if you do it in the right way, they can live with it because they understand the value of it. When you've engaged leadership, you've understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then you've rolled it out in a particular fashion that kind of addresses the most critical VIPs in the environment first and foremost. Make sure that they have what they need, they're set up and it's working properly. Then start to cascade through an organization and over communicate and do it in stages and phases. No need to flip the switch on everybody all at once. So those are some of the things that I think really folks need to really focus on when they switch to anything, whether SEG or otherwise in any IT environment.
In terms of use cases, can you share where companies can save a lot of money and get even better email security? You talked about new technologies as well as the importance of people. Anything you can share around that?
What we see is a lot of folks tuning these kind of tools and then switching to maybe an ICE vendor or something like this, something that is designed to handle financial fraud, handle social engineering, something that's focused in on that. But they'll get enhanced security. They'll still be addressing that noise. They'll still be handling a lot of the kind of unwanted vendor mail, right? Not malicious, but it's spam, and able to increase their overall security posture and capability, save themselves a lot of time, and really enhance the overall value to the company. That's the number one use case I see out there because every E1 license has EOP built in. So just imagine what you could do with some big, large IT spend now off your books. What else could you do with those resources? How better equipped could your team and your company be? It's a real opportunity once you know that these tools are good and they exist and they're out there to be taken advantage of.
In the report that you wrote up, you talked about recommendations for selling this internally to your team. You talked about over communication leading from the front, preparing your team, focusing on VIPs, and then start to scale. You touched on a few of these points earlier, but perhaps we could walk through each one by one. If you've made up your mind, or if you're bought into this idea of, hey, how can I get the best bang for my buck?
Yeah, I think first of all, defining the problem is a good place. What is the problem? We have tools that are in place and designed to do a job, and we still see it every single day, that things are coming through, our companies at risk, and it's really just not getting the job done. I think it's very critical, first and foremost, to articulate and define that problem clearly, because usually with the right app, the things you need are available, right? Whether it be support, whether it be resources, right? If you craft the right ask, you're going to find that doors open and unlock, and you have people rally behind change. The problem is a lot of folks don't often understand why we're making a change, why we're investing, that type of thing. But I think how you sell it internally, right, is you look at people that have done this before, they have guides, and they have made these large changes in organizations. And we have a plan, right? We know how we're going to approach this. We also now know that we have a problem. We can articulate it. And we also know what the opportunity is from a financial perspective to augment our kind of security landscape and change it for the better in a lot of different ways, from an efficiency standpoint, from a cost standpoint. So how you do that, right? The first and foremost thing, I think I touched on it earlier, is over-communicate to users, over-communicate to leadership. Just can't stress that enough. I'd say lead from the front. And what I mean by that is you should be kind of eating your own dog food. I know that's a saying a lot of folks, but if you have an IT organization, right, who you're going to make the switch on first? Those are the folks that are technical. They're going to be the loudest and most articulate voices in the room from a technology perspective and a security perspective. That's a great place to start, and make sure that as you're tuning, you can do quite a bit without impacting the larger organization. Right there, I think preparing your team, making sure that as you roll this out, clear instructions about what to do, clear instructions about how to escalate, where to escalate, when to escalate, making sure that you have folks available, make sure that they know this change is coming. That's part of that over communication process. So that's a big part of it. But then how you roll this change out is very critical, right? It's one thing to flip a switch. It's another to do this in a managed, kind of coordinated fashion. And if you're going to start with a group, I think your VIPs, your C levels in an organization, right? It may not be all of them at once. It's going to vary based on your individual company, but you want to make sure that they understand the change, they're reasonably satisfied, and they have whatever kind of concerns they have addressed first and foremost, and they're broken out in their own group, right? Because if you make this change in a larger organization, right, they're up in the clouds, for lack of a better term. They're going to listen to their people and trust their people. And if they say, hey, my business is being impacted, that's now, as a technology organization, that's now your problem, right? And they're going to be working on behalf of their team to advocate for them and against your change. But if they're able to see the change, they're able to understand what it is and how it's personally impacted them in a positive or at least a neutral way, you're going to have a lot more efficacy when they come to you, because they're going to know where to go. They're going to know who to talk to. They're going to know how to get their concerns addressed, and they're going to communicate that to their team. And so then getting those folks on board is absolutely critical, and can't give a white glove service more there. That's absolutely imperative. Once you have that, then you can start to phase roll these things out. And if you have a large organization across the globe, you should be communicating locally and understand which groups you're going to move, which groups are, what kind of problems they have, what kind of challenges they have. Are they expecting significant change in a few days may not be the right time to push it out. Are they in a matrix model? Are they everybody underneath one person in a certain location? Make sure you understand that environment about and where you're going to make the change, and do it in a phased approach. And those people that are there, or virtually or in person, like I said, prepared to the team, they have the tools that they need to either be successful directly or escalate and become successful very quickly with anything they aren't equipped to handle themselves. And I think that setting expectations within the team, like, not everyone's going to no one loves change. I don't. My guess is, Brendan, you don't either. Change is always hard.
Well, the better, and if it doesn't impact my day to day, I mean, it's
right.
I'm not going to complain too much.
Yeah, and change is always hard. So the goal is not necessarily to never have anyone give feedback that's constructive. That's not really the goal. The goal is that constructive feedback actually will help you along your way. Handle it and accept it for what it is and deal with it on its face. The thing I would say is that the real goal is to get a change implemented, get it rolled out, make sure that it's out there and it's not impacting the business's day to day. Make sure that it's not affecting orders, make sure it's not affecting people's ability to do their job. That's the real goal. Certainly, we want everyone to be happy and excited about every kind of thing we do in an IT organization or a technology organization. That said, there are folks that are always apprehensive about any kind of change in the environment. So just be cognizant about that, have the right mindset walking in, and continue to persevere. Have a backup plan and to roll things back. If certain groups or certain phases didn't go well, learn from that quickly and try again. Engage the right stakeholders. And again, just can't talk this enough, and over communicate and set the right expectations for folks. What are they going to see? When are they going to see it? What's going to happen? Those kind of things will enable this kind of transition to be successful.
The advice you're giving, it really goes far and beyond just security. It's built on sound product rollout advice. It's tried and tested. But just to clarify, the main focus here is adjusting your EOP or optimizing your EOP.
You hit the nail on the head, right? I'm not telling folks, hey, pull the lock off your front door. That's certainly not what I'm advocating.
And perhaps as we wrap up here today, based on your experience, have you seen more companies adopt that augmented email security layer and then gradually move away from their existing spam filters and just lean on existing Microsoft EOP plus the API email tools that are gaining more and more momentum in the market?
We see a lot of our clients certainly adopting this approach. Some are more aggressive than others because they know their environment better. So they're more comfortable at ending something. And some want kind of that layer and that transition and that comfort, right? As they move from one place to another, they know they're still covered. And in fact, now that they've added this other layer in advance, they know that not only covered, but they're doing better than they ever have been, right? In mitigating a lot of risk from the environment. They're doing a lot better because they've adopted a new strategy. They've adopted a new approach, right? It's not throw technology at it and hope for the best, right? Because we know that this is ultimately a human and a machine problem. It requires that human and machine solution. So really need to shift how we've been thinking about it. But absolutely, I think that folks can do a lot by getting ahead of it, looking at what they're going to do with that value that they're going to extract later on, take it for a test drive, see what it finds, and see if it can already identify. It may even help articulate why we need this, why we need to make this change. If you can kind of evaluate these things ahead of time, may be able to get some data or some information about, hey, it's not just a problem, it's a big problem, here's why. Or maybe it's not. But you have that data one way or another about your environment, about what you're seeing, what the threat landscape looks like, and you see it relative to the other security controls. Because you're behind, you're at an API level, you're behind the controls, you don't have to make a lot of changes. You may even be able to do it in a way where there's no end user impact whatsoever. That report and that data is only going to help your cause in articulating why we need this change and why the investment is worth it.
Maybe we can close out with the differences or the architectural differences between secure email gateway and the API technologies, which we've said a few times now. Gartner refers to them as integrated cloud email security solutions, why the industry is moving towards these solutions.
They are moving to the API exclusive solutions, the ICE solutions. They're moving in that direction because the entire market's moving that direction. Everybody in this space is moving. In fact, the legacy providers are trying to aggressively get into this space. They're trying to, because it provides enhanced capabilities, right? You see them added in because they know that the SEG can't handle post-delivery weaponized URLs, right? After it makes it past and then is weaponized, we've already seen it and let it go. So how do we address that? The only way to address that is to be at the mailbox level, to be through the API and monitoring and analyzing extremely fast. And also the amount of data that needs to be analyzed in any one given incident or message is monumental about what you could take in, about who is the sender, what do they say? How do they speak? Who the recipient? How do they normally handle mail? Are they a beginner? Are they at risk? Right? Are they going to click on almost anything? Or are they not? Right? How do we take those things into account in addition to the actual language of the message, the content of the message, how it's been positioned to us? Right? When you look at it from an architectural perspective, the only way to do that effectively is at the mailbox level, through a different means other than SMTP. I mean, SMTP, it's been a great solution. It's emails running on it all over the place. It's done a great job for what it is, but there's other ways to have this kind of security and also to scale it in a huge way. So integrating at the API level and being API exclusive is the way to go. It's not the only option, right? Because you already have that SEG in place. You've already paid for it. Microsoft has it built in. Why buy two SEGs? This is the big question I always have for folks. And some folks have great reasons because they have a bunch of other add-ons or something like this. And now it's an opportunity to even extract more value. You know, sending messages, secure file transfer. Well, we were relying on the SEG to do that. Well, I have Office message encryption. I have an e-discovery platform, all these things built into Microsoft, and I'm not extracting the value out of those kind of capabilities. So from an architectural perspective, there's a lot of opportunities once you start to think about this in a different way.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. I hope that was like, as the Big Lebowski says, the carpet that brings the room together, or the rug that brings the room together. So hopefully that clarified and helps position the API technology within the bigger picture of email security and why it's important and why Gartner made it its own category. Sorry, you wanted to say something.
No, I would just say, right, if it hasn't, right, I'm not hard to find, right? So
having said that, if folks want to reach out to you and chat more about this, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, of course, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. Right? Not hard to find. I'll give you those links that you can include if people want to reach out. Love talking about this stuff. It's been my whole career. So anytime I get an opportunity to talk shop with another email admin, I love to do it, or security analyst. Love it.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It was great to have you on the show, and we look forward to having you back more often. Thanks again for joining us, and to the rest of you, we'll see you next time.
That's a wrap for this episode of CyberSecurity Heroes. Practical and experiential knowledge on a day in the life of security heroes. Catch our next episode by subscribing or following through your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, please leave a rating for the show. They really help a lot. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.